Welcome to Matchbook Flashback. I'm your host, Alec Ogg, and I've got this big jar of matchbooks. It's a collection I bought at an estate sale, and they're all different colors and designs from different times and places. And the strangest thing happens when I light the matches. The flame starts to swirl hypnotically, and if you look into the flame, you can see a story unfold inside it, trapped like a memory in the matchbook. Should we try one? Let me grab one from the jar here. Oh, this one's military issued. It's that faded olive green army color and has a picture in white ink printed of a cargo truck. You know those military trucks with the stretched green canvas over the cargo area? Yeah, I guess in World War II, those vehicles, they weighed 1.5 tons, so they called them a deuce and a half. Like, they'd be like, oh, that's a deuce and a half. Anyway, but this matchbook is from the 70s. On the flip side, it says Fort Polk, 1975. That's a base in Louisiana that isn't even named Fort Polk anymore. They renamed it Fort Johnson in 2023, actually. Oh, and when I opened it up, on the inside flap, above the matches are written directions. It looks like someone jotted down directions to Camden, Arkansas. Well, let's light one of these and see if there's a story inside. Now, when I light the match, I need you to look deeply into the flame. Look deeply into the flame. Deeply into the flame.
I'm an old feller. I'm 67, so I've been around a while. But I kind of kept this in the box for over 45 years. I kept it inside so long, and just because you don't want to, say, hey, look, I've seen this. Well, yeah, all right, and everything else. You just kind of. So I never talked about it, but. I did, and I guess I call it therapy for me, because able to come out after all them years and talk about it has helped me tremendously, and so I've just, it's like a weight off my chest, because you go through life. I was 19 years old when I seen this thing, and here I am 67 now, so, it changes you. It literally changes you. And I was in the military back then, and I'm retired from law enforcement. When I came out of the military, I went into law enforcement, and then I retired here a few years ago. And, I had actually had the opportunity to take some reports from some people, who've seen them. And I never told them my encounter, because I wasn't ready to come out with it. But I encouraged them to. And I told them, I said, look, I believe you. I do believe you. I didn't tell them why. But I did tell them I believe you, and comfort them. I know what it feels like, the adrenaline rush, and you're trying to go ahead and get, you don't know how to relay it to people. And so it's been over the last 45, 46 years, it's been something. My wife's uncle, I live here in Louisiana. I live out here in the woods. I mean, way, way, way out in the swamps. So it's out my back door. I'm on front porch right now, and there's like 5 houses on this hill way out in the woods, and then there's 6.5 miles of swamp out my back door to the next house. So it's way out here. If you like deer hunting or squirrel hunting, this is it. Way out in the middle of it.
Was this the area where you saw it when you were 19?
Negative. No, I didn't see it here in Louisiana. I saw it in Arkansas, and explain that. I was stationed at Fort Polk, Louisiana, back in '75, and I'm originally from Southern California. And Uncle Sam had sent me all over the world. I've been everywhere in the military, but. Anyway, I was at Fort Polk in '75, And I was sent down with PCS from Fort Benning, Georgia, me and a few other guys. And we were sent PCS to 1st 61st Infantry Battalion. We're reactivating it at Fort Pope. One of my partners I met over there, we become friends pretty quick. And he lived where he's from. He was from a town called Camden, Arkansas, which is a real small town back in the day. I don't know how it is now. I ain't been back since, but it was a real small town back then. So his family was on a farm about 10 miles outside of Camden. So one weekend he invited me. He said, "Why don't you come over here, stay with my family, weekend, and meet my family and everything." And I did, and went up there and way out in the woods, and nice farm, about 250 acres, and met his folks and everything. And his sister, me and her hit it off pretty quick, so we became an item real fast. So after that, I started going up there to see her. I didn't worry about him. But not trying to diss him, but I just, hey, look, she's a whole lot pregnant. Anyway, so we hit it off, and I started going there on weekends. I'd get off work at post and Friday evenings, and he'd come up sometimes when he didn't go. I didn't matter. I was going up there to see her anyway, so I'd stay the weekend. And me and her dad hit it off real good, and I helped him work the cattle and, help build fence and that kind of thing over there. I love that kind of stuff anyway, so it really was a blessing for me, and just to get off post. It was about 4.5 hour drive up there, and, this one particular Friday night, we got up. Boy, it gives me chills even going back talking about it like this. It just does, because it's so many years ago. And like I said, I was a 19-year-old soldier. Went up there. Her granny, which was her dad's mama, was an incredible cook, and so she cooked fried chicken. I mean, just countrified, like it just make your toenails pop. So I loved her cooking, and she'd wait till I got up there on Friday evening before everyone ate. So I appreciated that. And we had dinner, and then we were all sitting in the living room, me and her brothers and her folks and everything. And her granny was in the kitchen washing dishes. Now, this is, like I said, it's a farm way out in the woods by itself. I think it was the closest house about a mile away. It was really out in the woods. And being a 250 acre farm, it was spread out pretty big. Out back behind their house was the pasture. Just trying to give you like a little picture of it.
Yeah.
There was a big pasture out the back door, and then it was nothing but woods to the left and right. And like I said, we were sitting in a den, we were watching TV, and it was about 9:30 at night. And all of a sudden, her granny just screamed. I mean, like someone stabbed her in the back. Well, we all jumped and ran. They had a long ass hallway. Went down from the den to the kitchen. It was an old farmhouse is what it was. And got there, and I was the first one there to the kitchen. I went in the door, and I almost cut a flip over Granny. She was sitting on the floor behind in, and she's pointing at the window over the kitchen sink and just screaming, "I seen it again! I seen it again!" And I mean, her face was white. And this was like a 70-year-old woman, And so she's going ballistic. Well, I might automatically assume in my military mind it was an intruder, what she saw. And so her folks, or my girlfriend's folks, knew exactly what it was. Evidently, it had come around before a few times. And but no one told me anything. I'm in the dark. So we grabbed weapons off the racks in the hallway, and we all went out the back door in the darkness. Well, it wasn't really that dark. It was a bright moon, bright moon. If you know how the night moon gets when it's really super bright, it's almost like daylight out there, like a strong glow, and you can see, 100 yards away, across the field, whatever. It was like that. Well, her brothers ran to the right, and me and her dad went to the left, and of course her and her mama stayed inside to attend to Granny because she was pretty shook up. And so I followed her daddy out there, and I had a 12 gauge, he had a 410. And as we were walking out down the steps going in towards the pasture, I seen across there, the moonlight, I seen all the cattle hunkered up on the other side of the pasture, and they were cutting up. And that to me was, reminiscent of something, a predator out there, And that didn't really throw me off because that could have been anything, could have been a bobcat, panther, or whatever, But it wasn't. Next, what really got my attention was he had 3 blue tick hounds he used for hunting dogs. And those things are trained to run. And I mean, run deer and everything. And you can hear them cutting up in the woods everywhere. They're after something. But they were under the house whining. And that's the first time I heard blue ticks whine. I've never heard that before. And I've run dogs for years, hunting deer and everything. I'd never seen them whine like that before. Scared to death, hiding under the porch in the house. So I asked her daddy. I said, "Hey," I said, "what's the deal with the blue ticks?" He said, "Don't worry about that." He said, "Just keep close behind me." Well, we started heading down towards. We had just built a fence. About a month and a half, 2 months prior, we built a dividing fence that divided the 50-acre swamp that they had from the pasture because he didn't want his cattle getting caught in that swamp, get stuck up and everything. So we had built that fence, and it was built out of a 4-foot cattle panel with a stretch of barbed wire, so it's about 5 foot high, and going across the length of the pasture. As we approached that corner post, and I remember this like it was yesterday. I mean, it's just like traumatic things hit you, and when you have a traumatic experience, you never forget details, even 50, 60 years later. Just, you remember them, And being a law enforcement, I can tell you that's how traumatic experiences are with people. You can tell when someone's experienced something super traumatic. They remember details years later. And I remember we went towards that corner post and a dividing fence, and we caught a stench, and it was pretty strong. I mean, it was nasty, very nasty. It was kind of like a strong old matted piss. I don't know if you've ever been in the military before, but back in the 70s, I don't know how the military is now. Back in the 70s, when I was during Vietnam and everything, when you're in installation, whatever, they had these old wooden, they call latrines. We call it the military. And that latrine, you go inside there and this is old piss from 10 years ago, and you walk inside, it about knocks you to the ground. It's some nasty stuff. It kind of smelled like that, but it was like a mix with something dead. And so, good God, what is that? And he knew exactly what it was. Again, they did not let me in on what we were going after. I'm assuming it's an intruder. But then again, I'm back in my mind, I'm saying, wait a minute, these blue ticks are hiding under the house. If it was an intruder, they, them dogs, you'd heard them cutting up all through the woods all night long. So I'm thinking, whatever it is big and bad. It's got to be, because you just don't scare blue ticks like that. And so I'm behind him, and we come to the corner post, and we're about, I'd say about 10 foot from the corner post now. And about that time, right in the thicket, other side of the corner post, we hear something, just ripping and roaring inside there. And it's like a 2,000-pound rhino, just twisting and turning in that thicket. Making a racket, breaking limbs, all kind of mess. And then all of a sudden, this thing clears the fence from the swamp into the pasture. This is about 25 foot in front of us, because the next morning we had pulled a recon, and we can go ahead and, where we were standing at to where his tracks were right there when he hit, thumped down into the pasture. And he sunk down pretty good, about a good 6 inches right there. We seen his footprints where he left. So he jumped that fence, landed there, squatted down, and stood up. And when he stood up, now, like I said, it's bright moon out, so we can see this thing very clearly. And he was standing flank of us. Sideways, flank. He didn't look directly at us. And to me, and this is exactly what I was getting the vibe of, he was as scared of us as we were scared of him. This is the only thing I can figure. He never made eye contact with us. When he stood up, he stood straight up, and that thing was about 8 foot tall, every bit of 8 foot tall. And I'm 6 foot, and this thing was, he was way taller than I am, and he had to weigh at least 600 or 700 pounds, at least that. Very muscular, very big, very massive. Had long arms. His hands were hanging down almost to his knees, but he stood straight up. And I'm trying to think in my mind, this is a bear. But I know in Arkansas and Louisiana, we got bears. We don't have bears that tall. They call them sugar bears, black bears out here. They're about maybe 4 or 5 foot tall. That's about as tall as they get. So this thing, being as big as it was no bear. And in the moonlight, on his profile, I can see its profile, its face. It was a man's face. It wasn't a bear because a bear had a snout. This was a man's face. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, what? And it was just that long hair all over his body. It was long. It was shining in the moonlight. And the stench was unbelievable coming off this thing. Well, now, understand what I'm explaining to you and describing to you here, what we're seeing on the other side of that fence, is all a matter of a few seconds. Okay, it's sounded longer because I'm explaining it to you, trying to break it down, but that's trying to give you a good picture. That's the law enforcement in me. The details, everything. So anyway, but this all happened in a matter of a few seconds once he jumped that fence. And he stands up, he's flanking us, not looking at us at all. Once he stands up, he runs from us. And he runs across the field, across the pasture. And he's running like a man. I say like a track star, because that's exactly how he ran. He ran long stride, arm swinging, never fell to all fours, never hunched over, just run straight away from us. And then and when he came to the cattle gate, he broke through that. He just crashed through that cattle gate like it was made of balsa wood. And when he crashed through it, he hollered. He went ahead and he just screamed. I mean, this roar was like, it filled the woods. Very powerful. And it sounded like a panther. Have you ever heard a panther scream before? It sounds like a woman that's screaming in distress. And then all of a sudden it ended like a bassy lion roar or something like that, or an elephant. And it just rattled your chest when it went off like that. And so that's why we didn't pursue him. That stopped us right there. When he went to that cattle gate, he roared. That was it. We wasn't going after him in darkness. And another reason why we didn't go after him, because that cattle gate was made. We had built that cattle gate a few months prior, and that cattle gate was made out of 2x6 oak. And if you know how heavy oak is, and how when you pick up a 2x6 oak board, it's got some weight to it. It's got some weight to it. And these were 10 foot. These were 10 foot oak boards, so they were, heavy. And to break oak boards like that, you got to have some power behind you. I'm talking about serious power behind you. And so it shattered that, and we found out how bad it was the next morning. We pulled a recon, like I say, and we went ahead and checked everything out. But after that happened, and he went through there and roared and everything, that's about time her brothers come around the other side of the house, and they said, "Did y'all hear that?" And I said, we heard it all right. We've seen that thing. And they said, "You seen it?" I said, "Yeah, we seen it." Well, her dad was real shook up. He was real shook up. And I had to sit him down. I thought he was going to have a panic attack. So I sat him down and said, "Hey, man, just calm down. Well, he almost started crying. He said, "I don't know what to do." He said, "I don't know what to do. It comes around here every once in a while." He said, "I have no idea how to pick my family." And I said, "What is it?" He said, "I don't know what it is." And, of course, the sons, they said, we don't know. It comes around every once in a while. And every time it's come around, it looks in the window at Granny. And evidently it's curious. I may be here cooking or whatever. I don't know. Now, he said that it never tried to break in the house. It never tried to attack anybody. Evidently just curious. So one of his sons, he's about 6'4", so I said, well, you stand under the kitchen window because the house is on pilings, you know. So I said, look, if you get on under the kitchen window and raise your hand up high as you can, stretch your fingers up, let's kind of get an idea of what kind of, you know, height there is from the ground to the kitchen window. We can see that we knew how big that thing was. We seen it. It was at least 8 foot. So I wanted to see if it was, you know, what kind of distance we had there. He reached up high as he could. Like I said, he's 6'4". So I feel he got up to about 7 foot with the fingertip, and he can barely touch the bottom rim of that kitchen window, which was consistent with something that was at least 8 foot or taller. So that fell right in the play like a puzzle right there. So we went in the house then, and I got with Granny. We sat down. She was calmed down then and everything. You know, you see, we saw this thing, and she goes, "You seen it?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, we seen it." Now we didn't see its face real good. We saw its profile because it was flankos. But did you see its face real good when I looked in the window at you? She goes, "Yes, I have. I've seen its face very well." And I said, "Can you describe it to me?" And she told me, she said it was a huge man's face, but it wasn't no man. That's her words. Rough looking skin on its face, hair all around it, but there's no hair on its face itself, just, you know, rougher than skin. It had big teeth, big mouth, and it had big nose, and it had very big red glowing eyes. And she said that its eyes was like, you know, like brake lights on a truck. And so I didn't doubt her. I didn't doubt her for a second. I mean, it's a 70-year-old gal. She's a Pentecostal gal. I mean, you know, I'm taking her at her word. You know, I believe everything she's saying. We seen this thing. We didn't see its face, but we saw its body and everything. So evidently she's telling the truth. The red eye thing just kind of threw me off guard because I never heard that before. I never heard of something having red eyes because that's vampire type stuff to me. So, you know, but that night, of course, no one slept that night. I want to tell you that right now. We was all wired. No one wanted to sleep, you know. So we sat out drinking coffee all night long, just talking about this thing. And he asked me. He said, "Look," he said, "we live outside of a small town." I said, "Camden wasn't that big at all. Maybe about 3,000 or 4,000 people back then." And he said, "We go to church there in Camden." And he said, "We sure don't want the word getting out about this thing. We don't want to talk about it. So if you would, please don't talk about it, not even when you go back to post." I said, "Look, don't worry about that, sir." I said, "Secret's safe with me. I won't talk about it." I wasn't in any way, because I said, I'm going to talk about somebody, they're going to think I'm crazy. So, you know, I'm not. So I respected that, and I kept it under wraps. And since that point in time, never did. Until one, I'm going to tell you here in a little bit, but the next day we got up, went ahead and pulled a recon out there, and looked and went back to the point of origin when this creature had jumped the fence, found his tracks there, and crossed the pasture. And we didn't have measuring tape, and so I just used my boot, my combat boots, and I went ahead and I stepped in one of them footprints, and my feet 11 inches in my boot, and I can go ahead and put one boot and about 3/4 mother step, toe to toe, in one of those prints. That pretty much was about 18, 19 inches long and about 5 inches wide. So it was a huge foot. And we tracked, you know, of course, we can see the tracks all the way across the pasture going to the cattle gate where it broke. So we did that. Got to the cattle gate. Of course, it was completely demolished. It was splintered. The remote boards were tore up like a B9 dozer, went through them full throttle. I mean, it just, you know, shattered it. And the amount of force that was used on that's unbelievable. Then, about 15 foot from the cattle gate, of course, was from the corner post. And the corner post was set with a cut down telephone pole, and that's where, you know, the rest of the fence come off that system right there. It wasn't broke, it was pulled over, and it was almost laying down from the force of that critter going through that fence, that gate. to pull something like that over, and it was sunk down about 5 foot, he said, in the ground, that's some extreme force. That's an extreme force right there to do something like that. Well, then to the left side of that cattle gate, about 25 foot from there, was a squeeze chute. And that squeeze chute, so they put the cattle at, and they squeeze them down to go ahead and hold them in place where they can go ahead and clip their horns or tag them, whatever. And it had jerked it uneven from the power. That's real powerful. That squeeze chute's made of solid steel, so. We went ahead. We didn't go any further than the cattle gate, because after that, this thing ran through a thicket of sawtooth briars. Sawtooth briars. Those briars are like about 3 inches long. So we wasn't about to go through that. It evidently ran through that. Maybe its skin was so thick, or I don't know. Its hair was so thick that those briars didn't bother. I have no idea. But we wasn't about to follow suit. No way. Any case, so after that, I went ahead and I go back to post, and I never talked about it. Never brought it up to anybody. Me and my girlfriend's brother, my partner, we never talked about it, ever. It didn't go back up. And then when on weekends, when I went back out there to see my girlfriend, never talked about it, ever. And the weekends after that I went there, never saw it again. I never seen it. Now, did it come around during the week when I wasn't there? I don't know. They never mentioned it, and I wasn't asking them, because they didn't want to talk about that thing, and I sure wasn't going to go ahead and bring it up, so I didn't. And for years and years and years, I just kept it inside me. About 45 years, and then, well, of course, my wife and me now, I come out the military, and went in 81, and processed out here at Fort Pope. And I'd gone overseas, a few times and everything. And any case, when I processed at Fort Pope, met her, and we got married in 84. And been out here ever since, out here in the woods. Since then, I've never seen one here in Louisiana. I hunt, deer hunt, squirrel hunt, rabbit hunt, hog hunt, all through these woods, thick woods out here. I've never seen one out here in the 40 years I've been here. The only one I've seen was the one in Arkansas. But I have friends of mine who've seen them out here. My old hunting buddy, of course, he's passed away now. My wife's uncle, name was Lewis Gill. We hunted together for years off of these woods out here. He's the first person I ever told about my encounter, and we had hunted all these woods everywhere and everything else. And of course, he's passed away now. He was about, the guy about 80 years old when I told him this. And get around great, like a 20-year-old, but he was 80. He was great, get around everywhere. And so one day I said, Uncle Lewis, I said, how about us going hunting over there at Anacoca Swamp? It's about 12 miles from here. Pretty rough area, pretty rough terrain. And he told me, he said, nope. He said, I'm not going there. I ain't been there in years, and I ain't going back. And I said, well, I understand it's pretty rough over there. So I said, I just wanted to see if you wanted to go. He goes, oh, no. He said, I can handle the terrain. That's not a problem. And I said, okay. I said, somewhere you don't like? He said, there's something. And I said, a thing? Well, what do you mean a thing? And understand, I never told him my encounter. This is straight from him. And he said, I've seen something back in the 50s. And he said, I ain't gone back since. Well, now my curiosity's up. And so I said, Uncle Lewis, I said, don't mind, telling me what you say. I don't talk about it. I ain't told my niece, which is my wife. I ain't told my brothers. I ain't told no one in my family about this. He said, I really don't want to talk about it. And I said, Uncle Lewis, he said, because you wouldn't believe me. I said, Uncle Lewis, trust me when I say I will believe you. Trust me when I tell you that. And he said, well, As long as it don't make you don't want to go ahead and hunt with me no more. I said, Uncle Lewis, I said, tell me, son, because you tell me, I'm going to tell you something. And he said, all right. So he went ahead and he told me his encounter. Out there in Anacoca Swamp, back in the 50s, him and Milton was out there squirrel hunting. And then it's about 12 miles from there. And they were out there on a bluff, and right at daybreak, because when you squirrel hunt, you get out there before daylight, because you want to, when the sun breaks daylight, you start seeing them limbs bounce. That's when squirrels jump, and that's when you can get them. And as soon as, they started getting just where they can see a little bit, make things out. Lewis said he's seen across the creek right there from him, about 100 foot away. He said it looked like a big old tree with no limbs on it, just standing there on a white sandbar. He said that's very strange, because you don't see trees on a white sandbar. You just don't see it. And so he said as it got a little brighter out where you can kind of make out things, he's looking, and then him and Milton both looking at this thing. And all of a sudden, he said the hair on his neck just froze. I mean, stood up. He said his hat almost popped off his head. He was that scared. And he said, looking at this thing, and he said, it's something tall, about 10 foot tall, covered in long hair, stands upright like a man. Just looking at it. Wasn't moving at all. That's why I thought it was a tree. So he didn't know it was alive or not. He said, and then all of a sudden, this thing rears back, and it lets out a roar. He said that was it, end of the story right there. He said it was on. This thing roared like that. It turned around, and it ran up the bluff. And it jumped off this bluff and took off. Well, they were like scared to death. And they went ahead and waited about 10 minutes, and he said, "Oh, let's go check it out and see what it was." And they eased over there across the creek, and they figured it was long gone by then. And they seen the tracks and the white sandbar and everything where it stepped up on the bluff, about 5 foot up, and it walked off. Well, and it grabbed a limb coming off another bluff when they were standing there on that after it roared. And he said it reached up and grabbed this limb and come off the bluff. Well, he looked at that limb, and it was about 12 foot up, so it had to have been about 10 foot tall, whatever it was they seen. And he said they never gone back there since. And he said, he said, I put my hand on the Bible on that. And I told him, I said, Uncle Lewis, I believe every word you said. Then I told him my encounter that happened in Arkansas. And at the end of that, I told him my encounter. After that, he about almost busted down, broke down. He said, I guess I ain't crazy. And I said, no, sir, you're not crazy. I promise. He said, what are these things? I said, beats me. I don't know. And I said, I'll be honest with you, Uncle Lewis, I don't want to know. I don't want to see one again. I have no desire to see one again. And Uncle Lewis, he said the same thing. He said, I don't ever want to see that again either. I said, well. So, we never hunted over there in Anacoca. And I did after he passed away. I went out there and hunted some, but I never seen anything out there. When I was stationed at Polk, after about 6 months after I seen this creature in Arkansas, first part of 76, went ahead and we were out there on maneuvers. We would train at Fort Polk, because Fort Polk's right there at the base of, right in the middle of Coxsackie. We would train in Coxsackie. We trained at a certain area called Peace-on Ridge. We trained that. And so 1st and 40th Armor was one of our armor battalions back in 76, and they were going on maneuvers. They had left that morning. The armor unit is made up of, you have your howitzers, mobile howitzers, you have your tanks, and 1681 tanks, you have your APCs, Jeeps, your deuce and a half, everything, and the whole battalion's going out in maneuvers to Peace-on. And the whole battalion seen this, whatever it was, some kind of creature crossing the road. And it was huge, it was giant, it was big, it was about 10 foot tall in that area there, they said, covered in long hair, ran across the road like a man. And so, of course, the BC, the battalion commander, 1st and 40s, he radioed back to division headquarters, which was General Haldane, was the post commander back in the 70s, Fort Polk. And one of the most amazing generals I ever served under. He was really good. General Patton, #2, I think. But anyway, he went ahead and he initiated shut down of Fort Polk. Not shut down as far as closing it down, for business, shutting it down from the public going in. Because back in those days, Fort Polk, Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, all the military bases were most of them were open posts, meaning the civilians can go on post, they can cross posts. Because a lot of them would use, you go across coming to Fort Polk, it was a shortcut going to Alexandria, Louisiana, which is a big town, and Highway 28 cuts into it. So they'd go across that, save them about 20 miles of driving instead of going to Leesville. Well, when he said it, he shut the post down for a week after that. And then, of course, the MPs had everything blocked off, and all the battalions on Fort Polk got put on alert to go out there and hunt this thing, whatever it was. And we did. We went all through Fort Polk, backwoods, Fort Polk, huge, miles and miles and miles and miles. And so we had all these battalions spread out there looking for this thing. And we went back in parts of Fort Polk that have been used for training since the Korean War. And so we were going, and it was me and about 2 other platoons. And we were going through the woods, and also we heard something crash, big crash. So we went to the woods to see what it was. It was deuce and a half was upside down, crushed. And whatever crushed it had to been a big, bad boy. I'll tell you that right now, because you know what a military deuce and a half looks like? I'm sure you've seen them before on war movies and that kind of stuff. But they're a big transport truck. And a big transport truck. And this thing was picked up and crunched. So we didn't see what it was. When we got to it, kind of deuce and a half, we didn't see the creature or anything else. However, we did hear through the grapevine that it was captured. Now, that's what we heard through the grapevine. Was it true? I don't know. I'm not going to say it was. This is, soldier GI a grapevine, which, sometimes you can believe, sometimes you can't. So I'm not going to say it was captured, but we heard it, that it was.
When the higher-ups in the military kind of told everyone to go out and hunt this thing, how did they refer to it, or how did that talk go? Did they talk around it, or did they label it, or do you remember any of that?
It was just that a creature was seen. A creature was seen out in Peason Ridge and out through the parts of back parts of Fort Polk. And he said, we want to go ahead and get everyone to go ahead and look out there and see if we can find out what it is. Now, he didn't mention anything about capturing it or anything else, just seeing what it was. And that's how we were told. He didn't mention Bigfoot or Sasquatch or anything else. It is the creature was seen. And that's what we were told to go out and look for. And like I said, we heard through the grapevine it was captured, but that was not through anything verifiable. That wasn't from any rank. That came from just some guys, that other battalions that we heard from. But, which is possible. It could have been, but I don't know.
When it smashed up that truck, can you tell me a little bit more about, did you get to see the truck?
Oh, yeah, we saw the truck. We saw the truck.
Can you describe the truck and how it was damaged?
The deuce and a half was thrown on its side, and it was smashed. When it was smashed, deuce and a half, the back bed of the deuce and a half, it has these wood uprights that are on it that, that they put canopies over it, canvas over it, that kind of thing when they transport troops or whatever. The wooden canopy there was completely smashed. It was all busted up. It was bad. The cab was smashed. It was pushed in. The windshield was broken. The hood was bent. It was demolished. And it was like something just either fell on it very heavy, which was nothing around it to fall on it, or something picked it up and smashed it. And that's the best way I can tell you. Now, I'm going to tell you this. A fella had contacted me about a year and a half ago. He was ex-military. And he told me, he said, we were talking, and he said, look, he said, we talked about that deuce and a half and everything. He said, get the smashed. He said, I had a similar situation happen. And he said, when I was in the military, he said, and he told me, he said, yeah, his deuce and a half got smashed too by this creature. And they never saw the creature. But they heard the noise and all that kind of thing. And I told them, now it wasn't at Fort Polk, it was another post. I think it was Washington or something like that. But anyway, so we kind of compared notes and everything. But yeah, it smashed it. Laying outside, it smashed that thing. The whole cab was messed up. Everything was messed up on it. Once we went ahead and radioed it in, we had to stay there until they sent some guys there to go ahead and reporters to go ahead and take pictures of it and everything else. They wanted pictures of it and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it was pretty unique. I mean, I don't know if you ever seen a deuce and a half or been inside of one before. If you go ahead and bring it up on the internet, bring up a deuce and a half from the 70s, from the military, they are a solid built truck. They're diesel trucks. They're big, and they are very solid built vehicles.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at one now on the internet.
Okay, there you go. And then you can imagine that they aren't, crushed like that. And so it's amazing. And I mean, the back bed is steel, solid steel, and the back bed is when the uprights come off it, and that was all banged up, and everything.
And your superiors understood what had destroyed it? Like they didn't question you really?
Well, they asked us if we'd seen it. We said no, we did, and we did not see it. We heard it, and that's when we responded to the area when we went to the woods. It was close enough to us to hear it smash. We went to it, and by the time we got to it, whoever did it was gone. Several of the other battalions, they had all kind of people who were seeing this thing, and hearing it through the woods and hearing it run through the woods and everything else. We just didn't see it. We just saw the damage it did to that vehicle. And after the event happened and everything, we were all, put on our fields and told by the General Haldane not to talk about it. They put us they put all the clubs we would go to down towards Leesville, called Billy Goat Hill. We'd party at. After work, they put it all on off limits. We couldn't go there for a month, and that way he wanted to keep anyone from talking about this off post. So we didn't. Amongst ourselves was about it. And it wasn't long after that I PCS to Europe, overseas. So, but these things are for real. I don't know what they are. I have no idea. Are they a Bigfoot? Could be. Sasquatch? Could be. I don't know. They're whatever they are, they're alive and well. And the fact that we were, about 25 foot from this thing when we saw it in Arkansas, there was no mistaking what this thing was. It was something but no bear, because I know bear can't run like a man. They can stand up and walk like a man, but they can't run like a man. Their hip structure and legs won't allow them to. They have to fall to all fours. This thing ran like a track star. It didn't have a snout, didn't have a facial features of a bear. It had the body of a man. Huge, wide shoulders. And I'll tell you also about a bear, because I've seen grizzlies, black bears, and everything. Bears, all kinds, that have sloped shoulders. They don't have broad shoulders. This thing had broad, like a bodybuilder, huge. And so these things are real. Now, I went TDY several times in the military.
What does that mean?
TDY is the temporary duty status. But basically what that is you're going on, the military loves acronyms. They have these different, things like PCS means permanent change station. Your TDY is a temporary duty status. You're going to train or going to a certain school, or you're being on a mission. Okay, that's what TDY means. And I went on TDY many different places because of my clearance. I had a high clearance, and in my combat MOS, and I was a Ranger qualified. So they used us up a lot of things. And, some of the things I can talk about, some I can't, even to this day, even though it's been 100 years ago, I can't talk about it. They're probably more stranger events that I've seen, but I can't talk about those. I did go on one that I can talk about. I was sent TDY to Fort Bliss, Texas, me and 5 other fellas. And this is back in '76, right before I went RPCF to Europe. And this is right after this is maybe about a month and a half, 2 months after the event happened at Fort Pope. And we were TDY'd to Fort Bliss, Texas. Fort Bliss, Texas is on the west end of Texas. It's pretty much right there on the border of New Mexico and outside El Paso. And we went there to go ahead, and we were given 5 tons. 5-ton vehicle is basically an old extra size deuce and a half. So you've seen that picture, that deuce and a half. 5-ton is basically it's big, bigger. And it had they had sealed boats, and we had to follow a chase vehicle. Chase vehicle was a military sedan. However, it was operated by 2 suits. We called suits with civilians. What were they? Have no idea. Were they CID? Could have been CIA, FBI. We have no clue. Have no idea. We just know they had a higher clearance than we had. And so, like I said, we had sealed loads. We followed a chase vehicle, and it was as the bird flies, as the crow flies. Which, to understand, if you know anything about the terrain of New Mexico, once you go north of El Paso, up in New Mexico area, and you go north towards Santa Fe, New Mexico, and all them areas there, lots of mountains and lots of mesas and lots of desert. And it's about a 6.5 hour drive. I remember that very well. It was very hot. We got out there, finally got there in the middle of nowhere. Now according to what we were told, we were, our point of entry was to be about 27 miles south of Pagosa Springs, Colorado, as the crow flies. Okay, so again, straight line. And we got out in the middle of the desert. I remember it was nothing. No houses, no towns, nothing but desert and mesas around us. And there was a guard shack, middle of nowhere, and a white stop about 20 foot to the left of it, and a 6-foot white stop. We come up there for all the chase vehicle parks. Suits come out, they go ahead, and here comes this officer out of the guard shack. Now, this is where it gets weird, because in the military, you don't have officers as guards. Your guards are going to be your privates, your PFCs, your corporals, your specialists, your sergeants. That's E5 is about the highest you're going to go as a guard. Officers, second lieutenants, first lieutenants, captains, and such like that, you never see as guards ever. It's got to be super classified to see an officer as a guard. And there was a first lieutenant come out of that guard check. So we knew this is highly classified, big time. But in the middle of nowhere, right? So he guides the first 5-ton up. The second 5-ton. Okay, so it was bumper to bumper, bumper to bumper, bumper to bumper. The first one had bumper to the white stop. We rolled out of the vehicle. Other side of the right side of the guard shack, facing away from the vehicles, and stand at parade rest. In about 120 degree heat. Now here we are in these starch combat fatigues. You were in starch combat fatigues in the middle of 120 degree heat. You're talking about getting chaffed and, uncomfortable. It's bad news. And about 3 hours standing there. So, that's about an hour and a half or so into the thing. Curiosity got the best of me. So I just peeked back real quick. I knew I couldn't get a chance to get caught, so I had to make a fast peek. And I turned to look a little bit, and I remember seeing in a glance, the vehicles are gone. Evidently, they've been lowered down into a lower level. And I looked into what I like I said, this quick few seconds, but plants, some kind of a maintenance facility. Now, maintenance bay, I've seen 55-gallon drums and maybe some hoses or something hanging for, rolled up on the walls, that kind of thing. And then I turned back around. And then, of course, about an hour or so later, we're ordered about, to attention, turn about face, turn about face. Here's the vehicles back topside again, all facing the opposite direction, all empty. We're back in the vehicles, and then follow the chase vehicle back to Fort Bliss. And we did. Got back to Bliss, and we went ahead and, we maintenance our vehicles, topped them off, got them all taken care of, did a little paperwork and everything. Then we were ordered into a debriefing room. We got in the debriefing room, and there was a full-blood colonel there. And he, had us sign federal documents and everything. And he told us, he said, gentlemen, he said, what happened today did not happen. And if we're not talking about amongst yourselves or anybody else. So, of course, we had a big hush on that. Well, got back to Fort Polk, and one of my best friends, he was in Army Intel. And, I mean, his clearance was like, way up there. And so, we got talking a little bit, and I said, man, I ain't supposed to say nothing about this. He said, man, look, because I've known him for years. He said, he said, it's good with me, buddy. He said, I just want to get an idea where you were. He said, I can just tell you the basic coordinates. That's all I can tell you. So I did, and he went ahead and researched it. Well, we hung around together for a while. After that, I went ahead and PCF to Europe. And when I, came back from overseas, I crossed here at Fort Polk, crossed that again. And so I come over here, and I went ahead and I come out, and I got married, like I said, in 84. And in 93, I'm over there down in Billy Glove Hill, messing around one of the clubs. And guess who I run into? Oh, C.J. Erickson. I looked at him, and I said, no way, you're still here, son? I said, they never transferred you anywhere? He said, nope. He said, I'm furniture. He said, I'm fixing to retire. Yeah, he stayed there his whole, that was it. After he went to his AIT and everything, he went ahead and went there at Fort Polk, and he's been there ever since. All the years I was overseas and everywhere else, and, there here he was. So he was fixing to retire in 93. And, we got talking and everything, and I said, CJ, I said, why don't you come out the house, have some coffee, man? He said, well, where are you living at? I said, out in the woods, Maryville. He said, I heard of Maryville, but I said, it's about 40 miles here. So he went ahead and he followed me up here. He said, man, my God, son. He said, you like in training areas out here? I said, I know. I said, out here in the woods, I love it, So we sat here in this very porch I'm sitting on right now talking to you, 1993. And he told me, he said, look, I'm going to get you something. He said, but you got to promise me you're going to put it up in a safety deposit box and not keep it in your house. And I said, well, I don't know if I want. What are we talking about, Little? And so he said, remember that mission you went on, that TUI mission to Fort Bliss before you went overseas? And I said, back in 76. And I said, yeah. Yeah, he said, remember I told you I was looking into it? I said, yeah. I said, I figured you forgot about it. He said, no, I ain't forgot about it. I didn't know if I ever see you again. He said, well, so I seen you over here at the club. I said, man, look, here's a chance to go ahead and let you know what I found out. Again, this is 1993. He told me, he said, look, he said, this place you went to, 27 miles, he said, about 27 miles south of Goshen Springs, Colorado. He said, according to what you seen and where you were, he said, I believe there's a place, a town out there in New Mexico called, and when he said it to me, the name, I never heard of the name before, ever. I didn't hear about it again until probably around 2007, 2008, maybe. And the only reason I heard about it then because my son he brought it up on the internet. he can work the computer way better than I could. I'm not a computer person. I'm an old fella. I'm old school, so he has to fix my phone for me and everything. I don't know anything about that kind of stuff. So it's funny how you got to get your kids to go ahead and do that stuff because he's big time in the computer. Now he does computer programming and everything. But anyway, so CJ goes ahead and tells me, he said, where you were I was close to the vicinity of a town called Dulce, New Mexico. And I said, there were no towns around that we saw. He said it might have been the other side of a mesa or a hill or something like that. You couldn't see it or something like that. He said, you were in that vicinity. And he said, when you said you seen, delivering there and those vehicles went down in kind of a lower elevator or sorts, whatever. And you seen it in the maintenance facility. He said, I personally believe you seen into the maintenance facility of this facility, underground facility. And I said, well, it was an underground facility of some kind. I don't know what it was. I don't know, but I didn't know the velocity of this story or what Dulce was until, like I said, about 2008, 2009, when my son brought it up on the computer. And he said, hey, Pop, he says, wasn't this where you said I said, what is it? He brought it up and everything. And because CJ just told me, he said there's an underground facility there outside this. He said this is a town called Dulce, New Mexico, and he said it's really becoming a hot item now. This is like 15 years after CJ told me this back in '93, and so was it Dulce I seen? I don't know. I'm not going to sit there and tell you what it was. I don't know. And if I don't know for sure, I'm not going to say it. I just say it could be because in the vicinity, according to CJ, we were in that vicinity. We were there. So is it possible? Yes. Was it? I don't know. And, but putting all the points together of the secrecy of it and everything else and having, be debriefed and all that kind of stuff, it's very possible. But did I see any aliens or any UFOs? Absolutely not. I didn't see, all I saw was a maintenance facility, but, and a glimpse of that, and that was it. But any case, what CJ had given me was something that I still to this date have not read, all of it. I'll be honest with you, I'm afraid to, because it was a military file, copy of a military file. And this is, like I said, he had gotten this, back in the 80s. So he's given it to me in '93. The little bit of it I read, I did like you said, put it in the security box and bank, and that first day, and it's been ever since. I won't even go back and look at it. I'm too scared to look at it. I'm hate to say it, but I'm too scared to look at it because if a tenth of what I read is real, we're screwed. That's all I'm going to say.
So it's a confidential document you can't talk about?
Oh, highly. And I like I said, I haven't read the whole thing. I will not read the whole thing. A little bit I did glance through. I'm just hoping it's not real. I mean, it's not true. I mean, that's all I can say.
When you said you were in law enforcement and you kind of heard people say strange things and you told them, I don't think you're crazy. Do you remember any of those stories that they reported?
Yeah. People seeing one where some folks had driving down the highway going to Alexandria down Highway 28, and they had seen something big and hairy cross the road, and they said it was pretty tall. Like I said, we have bear out here in Louisiana, but they're only like 4, maybe 5 foot tall at the tallest. We don't have any grizzlies out here or something like that. So, it really started them, So when I went to, talk to them, and they were very shook up. They were an older couple, and so of course I told them, I said, I believe what you're saying. I do. I didn't tell them my encounter, but I did tell them I believed in what they were saying. So, and of course, he kept saying, "Man, we were hoping you were going to think we were insane." I said, "No, or drunk." I said, "No. I trust me. I believe what you guys are saying." Another one is where a guy had taken a shot at one, and Highway 28 going to Alec is right there, pretty much in the boundaries of Coxsackie National Forest, and got some of the biggest, thickest swamps out there you ever want to go into. So, and I had one guy, he was hunting, and he went ahead and took a shot at one. And he said he didn't know if he hit it or not, but he said he was about 6'5", and he said it made him look like a munchkin. So, and but we had to report on it and everything else, because, I said, "Well, you sure it wasn't a person or something like that?" He said, "It wasn't no person." And he said, "And it ran through a thicket." He said, "Ain't no one gonna run through that, in that swamp, because that there's gators and everything else out there, snakes of all kinds. Ain't no one gonna run through something like that." Well, but and so you have, and then I have partners of mine who took reports on some that really even better than that, but I find it so much easier to talk about it. But my coming forward and talking about these things has got a twofold type of thing to it. And number one, getting it off my chest and able to talk about it, like I said, it's good therapy for me. But it helps me get that off my head. But number two is to go ahead and try to encourage other people to come forward and not keep it inside them like I did all those years. Because there's lots of people out there that have seen these things and have experiences like this, or in whatever else it may be, and they don't want to come forward because they're afraid of the ridicule, afraid of getting, well, you're crazy, you're on drugs, whatever. And, so they keep it inside of them. And it's not good. I think, so I try to encourage people, come forward. Because now people are starting to come forward now.
I guess one last question to close us out here. What would you say to skeptical people out there who might not believe in this stuff?
I tell them just like this. I wore your shoes once. I walked in your shoes. I never believed in these things. I never did. I actually laughed at folks who talked about seeing them and stuff, but seeing was believing for me.
Well, as you can see, the match has gone out. And as the smoke clears, I can still smell a whiff of that terrible urine odor. I hope that's lingering from the Bigfoot and not me. But if you enjoyed that Bigfoot encounter, perhaps you could text a link of this episode to a friend who might enjoy it as well. That's the best way to support a young show like this, word of mouth. Another great way to support the show is to leave us a 5-star rating. It just takes one click and it really helps us out. Lastly, if you have an unusual story and you'd like to tell me about it, please email Alec at parasaur.co. Thank you again for stopping by, and I hope you come back next week, because I have another match to light.